Today's webinar is with some really good friends, Chad and Danielle Reyes. Chad and Danielle are the founders of Lions Pride Leadership, which is a very high-level executive coaching and leadership organization. They have mastermind events, leadership training, team training. And I know Chad and Danielle, I can't give names, but have been working with some very high-profile and very profitable franchisors. And so we're really happy they're joining us today. And today is all about using leadership principles to grow your franchise system. So Chad, Danielle, thanks for doing this webinar today.
Well, thank you.
Charles, thank you for having us. Appreciate that.
There's going to be a lot to get into. And before the webinar, we've been speaking about, what are the things that franchisors need to really grow their franchise systems, and the principles to put in place for franchise growth. So there's a couple of things we've been talking about, which are the franchisors that are growing right now and the things they could do along the way to really build that leadership team. And then also there's, it was an interesting phrase that Chad had mentioned, which was they're working right now with some very successful franchisors, and they're focused on leadership principles and leadership skills and tasks that maybe were overlooked during the growth process. And so now, bringing everything together. So guys, I'm looking forward to it. Danielle, Chad, just a little bit about Lions Pride. I know you guys are working with some high-level people, but what does the Lions Pride team do?
We're excited to be with you guys today, but Lions Pride is a leadership and business coaching company, and the goal of it really is to develop leaders to be more effective in the businesses that they lead, and create systems, help them have effective systems that'll help them be more profitable, find more fulfillment, find more joy. When I think of businesses, Charles, usually they start for three reasons, right? They want to be profitable, they want to find fulfillment, and they want to find joy in doing it, right? And a lot of the times you get one of the three or two of the three, but the organizations that are really thriving and succeeding have all three. So we're hoping to share some stuff with you guys today that'll be really impactful, some stuff you can take away, and really just help you build your business. That's my wife and our purpose is to impact leaders to be able to help them find profit, joy, and fulfillment in what they do.
So we've known each other a while, and even for preparing, and I mean this because in our firm, we do focus on strategic planning, and we have our traction meetings, and we focus on team and core principles and values. And then even as we're preparing for today's webinar, I felt like it was a therapy session because it really did, right? And so you question, and I even as we were prepping, I'm questioning as a leader, I know my heart's in the right place, but there's, you talk about that leadership is taught or it's learned. You're not born with it, and that was really coming through as we're prepping. And I'm definitely going to have some questions along the way also. So diving right into it, and I think this was really good because when we were speaking, I sort of glossed over the whole leadership, what it is and why it's important. And you stopped me, Chad, and you said, "Hey, if we don't get this down right now, we're going to lose everyone and not provide value." And you'd mentioned that, and I think I do too, that people struggle with leadership. So just give us the philosophy, the foundation for this webinar in terms of leadership and the core principles that you think we need to know about.
Yeah. So Charles, Danielle and I talk about all the time that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So when you think about it, right, just because you started a business doesn't necessarily mean that you have influence with the people that are on your team or the people that you lead, right? But leadership is really being able to draw out of people what their best is and be able to help them to become who they were designed to be. And I know later on today we're going to be talking about some examples that we had shared, Charles, when we were on before. But that's leadership. Leadership is becoming the best version of who you were designed to be. And when you can do that, and you can do that well, profit follows, and a lot of profit follows.
I could say actually, we believe that leaders are not born, but you are born with a gift. And by utilizing that is where my husband just said we could fulfill all those things that we desire to fulfill through our organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a mindset because as you're saying this, right, I'm like, yeah, but I want to make money and grow the organization, build. But you're so right about these principles, and it does take time. I think as business owners, we just skip ahead and make all these assumptions, and I think and for everyone who's listening, there's a great slide later on, and the materials Chad and Danielle provided are great. Just breaking down some of the value leadership adds to a brand like Chick-fil-A, and I think Chad and Danielle, even as we prepped, are very mindful and emphasize to me that these leadership principles apply at a couple of levels: one, core management team, and two, franchisees, which I think Chad and Danielle bring a very interesting perspective. So I'm sitting there, I'm building my franchise organization. Things are well. We're a team of 3 people or we're a team of 20 people. Why do what's so important to me to understand as to why I need to get my leadership right and work on it?
Yep. So Charles, I think when you think of businesses, right, they want to go fast, they want to go far, and they want to do it profitably, right? So fast, far, and profitable. And to do that, though, you need people. And a lot of the times, and those of you that can see the screen, you see that there's a hand, there's a brain, and a heart holding hands. The most successful organizations, Charles, do it. They have people that are very smart, high IQ, but then they have people who have a very high EQ. And studies have shown it doesn't matter the industry, it doesn't matter the business, it doesn't matter the country. The people that have the highest EQ are the most successful people that are out there. And the reason being is IQ says I know what to do. EQ says I know when to do it and how to do it. Got it? So a lot of the times businesses focus so often trying to develop the best systems and structures, and they leave out the part that people run systems and structures. So if you put great systems and structures, but you demoralize your team and they don't want to show up in the morning because you're not encouraging them, well, guess what happens? Profit goes down. Profit is a byproduct of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So when you combine the IQ and the EQ, and really, I know we want to talk about this later, but really that's what Chick-fil-A does. Whether you like them or not, they're one of the most successful franchises in the world. And they're actually more profitable than the average McDonald's, Starbucks, and Subway combined when it comes to revenue. They do more revenue than those 3 franchises on average nationally. And the reason being is they develop people. And when people are developed and people feel appreciated and people feel valued, they produce better. Danielle and I say all the time, appreciated people appreciate. When people feel appreciated, they increase their value to you, to the customer, to the client. And that's really the key of leadership, is making people know that they value, that they're valuable, that we value them, and that they have an ability to impact people positively.
And just to go back to the emotional intelligence for a moment, we think it's what you know, or how much you know. But emotional intelligence is so pivotal and so important, because you could have somebody who fits the right model running the team, but if they're not emotionally well to handle the situations and navigate their team, then that is a real effect, a negative effect within the organizations that some people are just blinded in seeing, and it's not something that's spoken a lot about.
We've made amazing progress at our firm, and I know it's our team, and I'm worried about letting our team down, right? But if someone's out there right now, what would be a red flag about, hey, your EQ is off, or what would be a symptom of that they could perceive right now? Hey, something's off there.
Yeah. So organizations that struggle usually have 2 things that occur. The first is breakdown in communication, and then it's followed by breakdown in trust. So if you have if you're seeing communication issues, not being able to hear each other effectively, not understanding each other, not trusting each other. If you have a leadership team that doesn't trust each other, you have an organization that's having a breakdown in that EQ area, Charles. So we know this is that when communication breaks down, the next thing that follows is trust breaks down. And if you want to have a highly successful, profitable organization, and you don't have communication and you don't have trust, how could you build it? It doesn't matter how smart you are. Without communicating and without having trust, the organization is going to flop. So if you're struggling in those areas in your organization, I would encourage you to really look into it further and really say, okay, how can we develop a higher level of EQ in our organization so that we can effectively communicate better and hopefully have better trust with each other? And when you have high communication and high trust, you also have a much more profitable organization.
Yeah, I'll also bring up a different scenario. If you're having a team meeting and you can't get through that team meeting because it breaks down the communication, but emotions are high and they can no longer even hear each other.
Yeah.
And before you know it, they walk out of the meeting and you'll hear the team turn around and say, well, that was an unproductive meeting. Like, what did we address? What came from that? That also shows that somebody's in a low EQ because they're not aware that if their emotions are high, if somebody triggered something, they got angry, upset, emotional for some reason, and it's high, and they don't know to remove themselves for a few minutes, get themselves back to a normal place, and come back in and address what needs to be addressed. That could just be a lot of meetings that really don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Chad, I was getting to with Danielle, because I'm being selfish right now in terms of, so I was traveling, I think 2 weeks ago. And so we had our weekly traction meeting. I called in and I got to tell you, our core team had pushed me on certain issues. I didn't like it. I was defensive. I got off the phone. Not in any rude way. And we finished the call and I got off the phone. And then I sat there thinking for about 15 minutes. And then I emailed everyone because I'm like, thank you, because you're right about the issues you raised, even though I don't want to. It was very interesting because, on the one hand, I mean, after the call, I was very proud that it happened. Not me, I'm saying my team, because I was thinking, wow, imagine if we just had if people didn't care and they're shrugging their shoulders, then why bring this up? But everyone stuck to their ground and they were right naturally. And it was pretty powerful for me,
And that's a high EQ to even know that, because if the buttons kept getting pressed or you kept getting defensive, something else could have occurred in that situation, but you stopped, you evaluated what just happened, and then you took a positive action, which is high EQ.
No, and it was all positive, but I wasn't mad at anyone. I was upset, and they knew that I'd be sensitive to an issue, and I was. And but credit to them for. I mean, I just sat there. I was the fact that it came up and everyone pushed on it, and I thought it was good, but I was upset at the moment. I really was. That's interesting.
I have those buttons too.
Yeah. So Charles, I just want to speak to this whole EQ area, and give a tool to those that are listening in. A lot of the times, EQ is affected by the chemicals that are in our body, right? So I'm sure you, Charles, have been in conversations where you could feel your adrenaline rushing, you could feel frustration building up, right? And what actually happens is your body releases a chemical known as epinephrine, right? Epinephrine. So when that chemical is released into your bloodstream, it makes it very hard to communicate because your body is now dealing with a whole chemical reaction that's going through your bloodstream. So part of having a high level of EQ is knowing that when you're in those scenarios where high tense situations, high conflict situations, is that fight or flight mode that often comes about, like Danielle just said, that fight or flight mode, we need to be able to recognize that and then have some techniques that help us to be a more effective leader. And one of the things that we talk about is just a breathing exercise. If you just take 30 seconds or 60 seconds to just focus on your breathing, it'll help release that tension and it'll allow you to hear clearer. And a lot of times I don't know about you, but I know on my end, when people say, I'm not understanding you, a lot of the times it's not that they're not understanding the words that they're saying. They're not able to comprehend because the chemicals that have been released through our bloodstream. So I just wanted to share that with those that are listening, because there's a scientific aspect of it that supports this as well. That's the reason why people that have a higher level of EQs that can manage their emotions more effectively are usually make more money and are more profitable if they're a business owner.
And what's interesting to me is that all of this has such an amplified effect when you add in a franchise system, and we're talking about relationships with franchisees, right? So this is where I think the great franchisors and the great emerging brands get it, right? It's that franchisee satisfaction, validation, growth, and franchisors that aren't being good franchisors, I don't think they have, they don't have that partnership approach with franchisees, right? So, I mean, all of this applies to internal team and to franchisees, right?
Yeah.
How, I know you work with brands, but specifically when we're talking about EQ, are there examples you could give me about at least approaches, even basic things that franchisors or new initiatives they take with franchisees, or if it's even just getting to know them better, to really facilitate that relationship?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say Charles, is that it's very important to, one, connect with people. If you don't connect with people, it makes it very difficult. Business is so much easier when you can have a connection with someone. So when you think about, a potential franchisee, right? We want to get to know them. We want to get to know who they are. We also want to create an environment that allows them to really be who they are. So a lot of the times when we're first meeting either a new client or a new franchisee, we all put our best face on and we try to make everything beautiful. But I think the best thing that we can do is try to, instead of making it sound great, creating an environment that allows us to share. Because the one thing that I know about Chick-fil-A, and I know we're going to be talking about them later, but I've spent countless hours, probably close to 1,000 hours studying their model. And the one thing that I know about their model is that they know clearly who they're looking for. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, they have they have thousands and thousands and thousands of people that want their franchise because of how profitable they are. But they know specifically what they're looking for. And what I would encourage anyone that's on here that's either a business owner or an emerging brand or franchise, create an environment with people that they can be themselves, because that's who they're going to be 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years down the line. So whenever you're looking at bringing on a new franchisee, I would encourage you not to sell them on the franchise. I would encourage you to have them to really share their heart, who they are, how they came to be where they are today, and learn more about them. And that will tell you, is this a good fit or not? And then secondly is, I would always encourage, before making any decision, to use a leadership assessment. Danielle and I encourage every business we work with to use leadership assessments, because they help eliminate a lot of the ambiguity that comes around, is this a good fit or not? So two things: create a safe environment for these new franchisees to share and to open up. And the second thing is, before you even think about going any further, create a leadership assessment or have a leadership assessment. We do that at our organization, but there's plenty of them that are out there. But use a leadership assessment that will give you a good gauge of who they are, what their passions are, what their competencies are, how they behave, what their style looks like.
It's even good for the owners and the leaders and the franchisees owners to actually take a leadership assessment themselves. If they can assess themselves, they know how to work better with their team and to share with them how to communicate and interact. So it's an overall awesome tool.
And here's a little thing that I'll share with you. Danielle and I, when we go home at times, not every night, so let's be clear on that. But Danielle will take out our leadership assessments and she'll look at hers and mine or our leadership team's assessment. so that we can work more effectively. And really the purpose of it is not to use it to manipulate our team. We use it to inspire and encourage our team. Because the better we can understand them and the better we understand ourselves, the more effectively we'll be able to run our organization and impact our clients.
Yeah, these points are major. You know, I mean, there's so many here, but especially the really having that avatar of what your franchisee a good fit is in that assessment. And I do love. I'm a big believer in a education process as opposed to a sales process. But I think that's a great point also about really letting them feel free to express who they are and seeing if that's a good fit. Look, I get there's always pressure to sell franchises, but we're talking here about really those principles that are going to create that accelerated success and growth long term. So that's really big stuff. I mean, you know, you have me wanting to sit down with you guys right now about some leadership assessments.
Charles,
and what's that?
I just want to say this also for those that are on here that are franchisors, right? Slow to let them into the system and fast to let them out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Chad, and I think that's a true statement. I think sometimes, unfortunately, for startup franchisors, not because they're not wise, or I think that's like from the school of hard knocks, right? And so I think that's a great policy. It absolutely is. And I know some amazing brands that you're expressing that slow, and some brands have expressed it. It's like a marriage. And so we're very cautious who we take on. Yeah, that's great advice. So, and I guess that gets to surviving and not surviving, but thriving. And so we know about the onboarding, and these are some of the principles. But Chad, I know you've studied Chick-fil-A. I know you work with a bunch of brands. So from a leadership perspective, walk us through where you think some of the magic is and some of the things that franchisors should be adapting to right now.
Yep. So I think the magic is in 4 areas, which is on the screen. But the first is knowing who you're looking for. Chick-fil-A is not looking for that entrepreneur who wants to change the world. They're looking for the business owner who wants to give their family an amazing life and positively impact their community, right? So they're looking for a person who wants to make $300,000 to $500,000 a year. They're looking for the person who wants to take their influence through the Chick-fil-A brand and positively impact their community, right? So that's the first thing. They know who they're looking for. Like, while I love Chick-fil-A and I love their business model, I would be a terrible potential franchisee. Yes. Because I would want to own the Chick-fil-A. I wouldn't want to be I wouldn't want to be working for a Chick-fil-A, right?
And I think that's a confusion, you know, because we look and say, okay, we have to duplicate ourselves for that franchise to thrive. Technically, you know, and that's not the case. We need to fit the right person that wants to be just there, have their attention there, and like my husband said, you know, impact their community, where, you know, the franchisor is looking to mass produce and you know, impact as many areas as we can.
You know, and so Chick-fil-A does these 4 things really, really well. One, they know exactly who they're looking for, Charles. There's no second guessing it. They have thousands of applications and they take 20, 30, 40, 50 a year. Why is that? Is because they know what they're looking for. And, you know, I had someone share with me many years ago the way the Federal Reserve used to operate, right? And they always wanted to look for counterfeit dollars, right? So how did they look for counterfeit dollars? They had them focus. They had the agents focus on what the actual dollars looked like. So they had their eyes focused on the actual dollars, and then what would happen is they'd throw in a counterfeit dollar, and they would be able to pick it up because the counterfeit dollar didn't look like the other dollars. Got it? Mm-hmm. So what Chick-fil-A does really well is they know exactly what it looks like, the person they're looking for. So when they come across that person, it's very clear that that's what that person looks like. Instead of saying, oh, this could be a good fit. Oh, well, this may be a great opportunity. They know what they're looking for and they don't deviate from it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is they have a very meticulously due diligence process. And when I say due diligence process, I really mean due diligence. They start out with making it very easy to submit an application. And by the time you get to the 11th step, by that time, you are either so committed that you're all in, or you didn't get past the third step. And typically the third or fourth step is you need to relinquish any ownership in any other operating business. So as an example, Danielle and I would have to relinquish ownership. If we wanted a Chick-fil-A franchise, we'd have to relinquish ownership in our other businesses. So that automatically eliminates a great potential amount of people, because some people are looking at this as multiple streams of income. Chick-fil-A, and this is point number 3, Chick-fil-A will only typically give you one location. And the reason why they do that, Charles, is because they know that whatever you put your attention on expands. So they want that one location to be your baby. Because if it's your baby, then you're going to treat your baby with the utmost respect and love. And then lastly, they build a true partnership. What they do is they put resources, they put training, they give you marketing people, they give you leadership development people, strategy, public relations people. They give you all of these resources, and they put their time, effort, and money behind them, because what they've done is they've really created a partnership where most franchises will take a 7% franchise fee or 7.5% franchise fee. They actually split profit. So they've partnered with these locations, and that's the reason why they make sure that it's the right person, because not only are they investing in them with their intellectual capital, but they're also putting financial capital behind them.
I mean, there's so many points here, but good brands, good franchisors, I see more and more are focused on assisting with leadership qualities and training with their franchisees. And it does move the needle and makes a big impact. I tell you that's interesting in terms of Chick-fil-A, right? Because we all take it for granted, but I guess it starts also with that operator, and it ends with that partnership. That's it's an amazing thing. And I do see brands doing this at a smaller scale, and I see the results in a big way. I mean, just some basic things in terms of basic strategic planning and leadership that a lot of franchisees are left, really never being introduced to. And I think it's also a great, I know you guys speak at events, but if you are a franchisor out there and you're listening to this webinar, I'd even contact Chad and Danielle about your next franchisee conference, and even to have some breakout leadership sessions, or, I just think this is tremendous for the relationships. So let's get into the foundation of successful leadership. I know the good thing about this so far, Chad, is we keep diving into everything, but if I did ask you what's the foundation of successful leadership, what's the answer there?
Well, I think it's really simple. You have to value people for you to want to invest in people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So as a franchisor, your number one priority should be valuing your franchisees. Because if you value them, you're going to want to invest in them. And if you ever look at any, Charles, you think of this, any relationship that you've ever been involved with, right? When you value the person, you want to invest in them. The second that you no longer value them, you no longer wanted to invest in them. So I would say that the key is find franchisees that you value, because then if you value them, you'll want to invest in and develop them and really create a culture and a franchise that's positive. But you can't do that if you don't value people. And that's been one of the things that my wife and I have originally struggled with. If I could be totally transparent, in the earlier years, we've been in business 17 years now. In the earlier years, we thought that the vision was more important than the people. And we'll come to find out that vision means nothing without the people. With the right people, and you invest in them and develop them, the vision not only comes to fruition quicker, but it's actually more enjoyable.
Right.
We actually love what we do every day because of the people that we're with.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful, Chad, in terms of, these are consistent themes that are happening here, right? But even I'm paraphrasing, you're saying if you have value, you value them, you'll invest in them, right? Which is a very powerful statement, I think, in the franchise world, in franchisor-franchisee relations, which also gets to qualifying the right franchisees and bringing on the right team and training them. So on this next slide, Chad, I know there's qualities that great leaders have. I know you've given us a great list. So I don't want to get in the way of that, but the one thing I'd ask, could you give us an example? Like, so what some great leadership traits or principles and just a quick example of what you're as a reference point.
Yeah. So to the first one, knowing the condition of your heart, right? Charles, unless we understand our motives, how could we ever positively build a franchise? So really knowing our motives, knowing the condition of our heart, because Danielle and I talk about this all the time. We say out of the condition of our heart, our mouth speaks, right? So if we don't know why we're doing what we're doing and we don't understand the condition of our heart, we'll never be able to build anything of significance. But the better we know ourselves and the better we know our motives, and to be honest with them. And sometimes it's okay if your motive is just to be profitable, but to know that, then it's much easier to lead and build your franchise and build the company or the organization. So I would say the first thing is knowing the condition of your heart. So I would say the second one is the commit to being a lifelong learner. Often when we start out on a journey, we expect the journey, the vision to happen immediately. And really where the success in any organization is in the journey. In the journey is where we learn. In the journey is where we fail. I've just seen working with entrepreneurs for 17 years, Charles, I've seen that most entrepreneurs try not to fail. The successful ones try to fail fast and then learn from it.
We also say something called fail forward, which I believe is a John Maxwell quote, but fail forward. It's okay to fail, embrace it as long as you're still moving forward, you're learning from it, which goes back to the lifelong learner.
Yep.
Yeah, these definitely hitting home in a positive way. I mean, failing forward, I'm trying to make my specialty, but you do, well, I guess gets to the next part, which is big. It's a mindset thing. I even, I even shared with you guys, how, I was at a conference and I'll be candid, very candid. I was shocked. A couple of lawyers at some firms that I respect pulled me aside and literally asked, what's the secret to your success? And I'm like, you're exaggerating our success, right? And I know we have a great team and have had great results and we're growing. But I do wake up and say, we should be further along. And I do have that frustration. I guess that gets into a third point about which my wife reminds me of, which is it really is more about the journey than the destination, right?
Yeah, we spoke a little bit about that before too. How being, the people that we're designed to be, right? We're here to create and to build, and we can see things further and faster than the rest of our team can, or even capable of doing. So yeah, we at first had that frustration a lot too. Yeah. Learning a little more now about the journey instead of the destination, but still always having that balance of, okay, I still have so much further to go and to accomplish, but what could I do today while enjoying the journey to get our team there? Because if you go by yourself, I mean, we may be able to, I can't even say we'd be able to create, but even if we thought we were able to get there without anybody else, we'd be there alone.
No.
So
one is just too small of a number for greatness.
Right.
So you can't create greatness with one. Greatness is when you have multiple people, and the only way to have multiple people is you got to go on a journey instead of a destination. And Charles, a lot of the times the destination, we never remember the destination. We remember the journey. So I just want to share this with all of the listeners, right? Is that when you look back, the day that you're on your deathbed, your dying bed, you're never going to say, oh, I made this. I built $1 billion company. You're going to remember the journey that you took to building that, right? And that's the really important part, is if we can remember that when it's all said and done, yeah, we may have these great organizations. We may have made billions of dollars or hundreds of millions or whatever the numbers are, right? But at the end of the day, we're going to remember the journey of it. And the journey is where we're able to positively impact people as well. And leadership is all about that. It's all about positively impacting people.
Right. And just to speak on the little comment I said on the side, you can't take it with you, right? We're going to need to impact people around us so that what we built can have a long-lasting effect after, an impact after we're no longer here. So that's something that.
And it does strike, like one of the beautiful things about franchising too, is when you're doing the right thing, you're a good franchisor, that journey is amplified time and again with families and stories and franchisees that trust you and then have their employees. And so I take that, that's, you know what, I think that's, you always need that reminder. I get it every day from my wife, but you know what, that struck me. And then the next one, you know, I view this as a Chad term, stay in the area of giftedness. And but it's so funny over time, every time we speak, I think you're so right about that. And it's such a blind spot for me because naturally you think you should be doing everything. And so what do you mean here, Chad? Stay in their area of giftedness, great leaders.
Yeah. So, we Charles, before we had this, we had a team meeting for our organization, and we were just kind of sharing, we were just talking about our upcoming year. And I was sharing with the team, I was saying, listen, we really need to spend more time in our area of giftedness. And I'm like, what is my area of giftedness? What is yours? What is John's? What is the rest of our team's area of giftedness, right? And what I mean by this is the area that you shine. And Charles, we had shared this earlier before we jumped onto this webinar. I'd give an example, right, of a tree. So let's say this is a tree trunk right here, right? And you had this fish. So the fish is kind of like flapping around trying to climb up the tree, right? And what happens after a while when a fish is trying to climb up a tree? It gets frustrated. And then it tries again and it gets more frustrated. And eventually it starts thinking that it's stupid. And that's what we do often in organizations. We have people on our team that are trying to do things that they were never designed or built to do. But when we take that fish in that example and we put it in the water, that fish all of a sudden now starts to thrive. And it thrives because we put it in an area which it was gifted in. If that fish doesn't swim, then there's something wrong because that fish was designed to swim, right? So it's the same thing in business. I think a lot of the times we think everyone needs to do everything. It's not the case. And the organizations that are performing at the highest level are not doing that. I want to share, Danielle and I have been blessed to spend time with John Maxwell as a friend, as a mentor. We were just with him and his team in California, right? Pebble Beach. And I got to tell you, Charles, right? When you look at his team, every single person on his team is performing in their area of giftedness. There's not one person on his team that's not performing in where they were designed to be. And when you look at their team, that's the reason why he's the #1 leadership coach in the world. There's a reason why he's influenced more people than probably anyone we've ever met. They have a team that performs in their giftedness. And I would encourage those that are listening, whether you have a 2-person team or 1-person team, you better be in your gifting. But if you have 2 people, 5 people, 10 people, 20 people on your team, find their gift. If they're marketing, then keep them in marketing. If they're teachers, then make sure that we get them in front of people to teach. If they're numbers, then keep them in the numbers. But let's not try to take that fish and get it to climb up the tree, because we all know that squirrels climb up trees, fish swim in water. So let's make sure that if we have fish, we put them in water. If they have squirrels, we put them on trees. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite analogies. I'm never going to look at a tree the same, Chad. Envision myself as a fish. No, it's good. And then, so take us through the rest. Really, your focal point. Systems, create systems for freedom. And to me, when we spoke, this is about building out systems. And your point and Danielle's point, Chick-fil-A, there's a system for everything, and that creates power for an organization, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When you look at systems, right? If a system is put in place, it initially, when a system is created in a company, it's always going to create some form of frustration, because what you're doing is you're changing what you were doing before, which creates some element of frustration, which is normal. But after that initial phase, if that system is creating frustration for an ongoing period of time, maybe it's not a good system then. Because when we talk about systems for freedom, Charles, we talk about that systems should be put in place that allow that person to stay in their area of giftedness. So I'll give you an example from a Chick-fil-A. If you go to a Chick-fil-A and you go to the front and you speak to the person that's at the cashier, the cash register, you'll recognize that they're usually very good with people. They always say my pleasure. And there's a system in place that allows them to focus on the customer rather than the system. So really, systems should give you freedom to be who you are rather than bondage to be who you're not.
And Chad, again, I value systems, but I didn't look at it from that perspective, right? About that freedom element and letting you operate. Just the rest, Chad, take me through them just briefly.
Yeah, so
Actually, if I could
yeah,
I just have something to say about the systems for freedom too. That's one aspect. Another aspect though is when the team has so many systems in place, the right systems in place, it allows the team to be creative, to flow to new heights and new levels of their giftedness and within the team, because they're not focused on, and I'm going to go to paperwork, right? Like, where is a document somewhere floating, or who has it on their computer, or what's going on here? You know, they're able to all go to a portal and turn around and say, okay, it's here, it's directed here, work on it, and it allows them to work just at a higher capacity, which will eventually bring in higher profit.
yeah.
Danielle, I got to tell you, I never thought of myself as a systems person. And the one thing I'm proud of, as I'll reflect back on this year, I know from where we were in January to where we are today, we've built out so many systems in a very positive way. We've added layers of service. We've created more redundancies, and we've built processes around things to make lives easier. So if it's an issue that comes up often, even something as simple as developing a guide for a client to facilitate the communication, to empower our team to say, hey, let's take a look at this first, and then we can have a call after that. And so we really have been, that's the one thing I'm really proud about. I mean, there's a bunch of things. I will say too, just throwing it out there, sharing with you guys and to anyone else listening, internally we use Slack, and it's been amazing for building out our systems and communication. So if that's something, I don't know if you guys use it, I definitely check that out. And then even today, before we got on the webinar, Melissa was showing me we use project management software. So we're breaking down all of our work into tasks and just different steps. And so it's really made a big difference. And it gives me comfort, because I feel like the more we build, the more our team members are empowered, the more we get things right, the less we reduce, mistakes. And I will say this, I feel so much better now knowing we've spent this time. And we've done it all along, but never like this year. And we're going to keep focusing on it, because I don't think you could survive, or I don't think you could reach a special level without the systems.
Right.
Yeah.
And you feel a little free.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, again, it's striking. I think I'm somewhat smart. I just think it takes me a long time to learn, right? And for it to get through. So yeah, look, it's what I find funny is it's such a basic statement for about systems, create systems for freedom, and yet it's so impactful. And that's why, I mean, for me, it's striking. Everything on this 9 points is so impactful.
Just before we jump into number point 7, I just want to share this, that any person who's ever seen construction on a high rise or a skyscraper, if you ever notice what they do, they go very deep into the ground first, and then they build up, right? So if you look at a 100-story skyscraper, it's close to 70 or 80 stories down into the ground, because the depth of the foundation is what supports the building structure above ground. So my point is that when you look at your businesses and when you look at the systems and structures that you're putting in place, Charles, similar to what you guys have been doing and really focused on this year, the deeper your systems, the more you can grow.
Yeah. That, again, it sounds so basic, but it's not in so many ways. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, it's true. So healthy boundaries in all area of life. I shared with you guys that I'm obsessed. Family and our firm, and not, it's not the money, making money, it's winning and achieving, right? So talk to me about healthy boundaries.
Yeah, so boundaries are important, because without boundaries, we don't know where one begins and one ends. A lot of the times you hear, I can never have someone who's a close friend or family member work with me. A lot of the times it's just struggling around boundaries. Boundaries also has to do a lot with communication. So the more effective that you can communicate, the better you can build boundaries. But boundaries are important, Charles, because when we build healthy boundaries, we allow people to have integrity in that relationship. When boundaries aren't there, integrity is taken out of relationships. And when boundaries are there, we're able to inject integrity into those relationships. So I would encourage those that are on this call that have franchisees, that have family or team members that are close to them, friends that are in the business with them. I'd encourage you to build better boundaries in a good way, healthy boundaries, because that's going to help bring integrity back to that relationship. And like I said earlier, and Danielle was alluding to, if we don't address the hard things, eventually communication breaks down. And when communication breaks down, then trust breaks down. When trust breaks down, profit goes out the window quick. So the key is work on communication. But how do you work on communication? Make sure you have a system for creating healthy boundaries in all areas of your life, including with franchisees.
Yeah, it's interesting because especially there too, that trust breaks down with franchisees. We see it with litigation. There's a snowball effect, right? Because then one not taints, but it impacts the other franchisee and another, and then it goes to play. It's definitely a domino effect, and I think that is that's big, especially for emerging brands that are under 100 units. Under 50 units, you're very vulnerable, right? So if those boundaries aren't established, those relationships maintained, it doesn't mean overdoing it. It means having respectful relationships. I've seen franchisors get attacked when they've done all the right things, but maybe the communication wasn't there, or getting back to your points, it was onboarding a franchisee that probably wasn't the right franchisee. At the time, it was a franchise sale and they're capitalized. And so that's, that's big. Focus on others and making their purpose bigger than their problems. Talk to me.
So I want to take number 8, and then I'm going to ask Danielle to share with number 9.
Sure.
So number 8, so Danielle and I were in Atlanta for the Live to Lead event with John Maxwell and his team. And I want to give an example, right? So John had a woman on the stage that he was interviewing, and her name was Angela. Arntz was her last name. But she was the CEO, the previous CEO of Burberry, and then the number 3 person at Apple, right? And John had asked her a very important question. He said, Angela, Angela was talking about her relationship with her dad and stuff. And John had said, what was one of the most important things that you ever learned from your dad? And she said this. She said, the one thing that I know is that when I look at a picture, I know that if I positively impacted those that I'm leading, is if when they look at a picture, they look at themselves last. So
We've tried that. That's hard.
It's very hard. So picture.
I get it. I mean, I'm staring at myself on this webinar. No.
Yeah, but take a look. Take a picture of 5 people. Who do you look at first? Usually we look at ourselves first. She said that her job as a leader is to help her team look at themselves in a picture last, which really means, which comes to number 8, which is focusing on others. If we focus on others, people feel valued, people feel appreciated, and success follows. She was the CEO of Burberry. She turned Burberry into one of the most highly profiled brands, most profitable brands before she left and went to Apple, right? But she realized that her job as the CEO was to focus on others, not to focus on profit. And when she focused on others, her profit increased. So I wanted to bring that up because Burberry is a huge global brand. Apple is one of the largest, most valuable companies in the world. And her position always was focus on others.
Yeah, that's it's funny because again, if you just read this deck, you don't get the message unless you hear things like that. That's and then Danielle, in terms of make their purpose bigger than their problems.
One of the things that Chad and I always have to go back to, because a lot of problems pop up, right? If we're looking, if we have a big vision, we have a big goal, there is going to be problems. Actually, we use something called Plan Ahead. And one of the,
one of the acronyms is expect problems.
Right. And we expect them and they come. But our purpose has to be bigger than our problems. And that's us focusing on what is that end goal. Charles, you and I spoke about, getting a little frustrated sometimes when we think that we aren't where we're supposed to be because we could think further and faster than our team. Well, when the problems come in, what is the goal? What is the purpose? Our purpose and our goal has to be so much greater than any problem that can come in. Because they're going to come in.
Yeah, and I always share this, Charles. I say this. I say if this is your problem, right, and this is your purpose, you could always see your purpose through the problem.
Right.
But a lot of times, what leaders do is they make their problem so big and their purpose so small that they can't see their purpose through the problem. So one of the things that great franchisees do and great leaders do is they always make their problem smaller than their purpose. And when the problem comes, they just make their purpose bigger. They just keep making their purpose bigger and bigger because no matter how big this problem is, if the purpose is bigger, you always see the purpose through the problem.
Yeah, we're actually in a place right now that when a problem does come in, I actually look at them and I'm like, okay, that just means that we're going to do bigger and better things. We're going to do greater things. We're going to tackle this problem head on, but we're going to have the attitude of saying, you know what, whatever comes from this is just going to be bigger and greater.
Danielle, that's like a powerful mindset. I'm just not saying, I'm actually, yeah, I mean, as we've gone through this webinar, I'm just thinking about so many things. It's true, right? We know all these things to be true. And then, and I've had the fortune of speaking with you guys before and friends and we've discussed these things. And it's so interesting to me how, sometimes you lose touch with it, right? And you lose that perspective. And then even as you guys are speaking, Chad, you're giving these examples and I'm thinking, boy, for franchisors and startup and emerging, when you have these mindsets and you focus on these processes, something does happen and change that is perceived in the marketplace by prospective franchisees, and you do attract the right ones, and you sort of create that intangible that's meaningful, and you start growing an organization. And then there's, there's a couple of layers. There's startups that it's difficult to gain that traction. And then there's brands that reach that 50 unit threshold. And then there's those really special organizations that get to that other level. And it's interesting as I reflect on these webinars and these principles. Like I always worry, like, are our webinars going to help people and do they make a big difference? And so um, this really impacted me. And I know all of this is will help a brand, whether it's a startup or emerging. And even as I'm looking at slides after this, and if it's good, like next slide was talking about problems and mistakes, and I don't even want to get into that. I think, I think this is where the core is at. I mean, anything else you think that franchisors or business owners need to be focused on and take away from this, Chad, Danielle?
Yeah, so Charles, I think in wrapping, there's really two things I'd like to share that I know is not on the slide, but I think is really important. The first thing is that leaders develop daily, not in a day. You see, a lot of people want to become an effective leader and they think they could take a magic pill. The way to become an effective leader is every day you become a little bit better than the day before. So that's the first thing. Leaders develop daily, not in a day, right? And the second thing is that you really have to be intentional with your growth, right? There's a big difference between being intentionally good and good intentions, right? A lot of the times people have very good intentions. I want to grow. I'm going to develop my team. I'm going to have systems in place. That's good intentions. Good intentions will only take you so far. Being intentionally good says, not only do I take those intentions, but I actually apply them and apply them immediately. And I start developing this, right? So I would say that if we're going to get to that level that you should be at, if we're going to get to the level that every single person who's listening to this should be at, you need to have not good intentions. Good intentions, there's plenty of people that died with all these good intentions in their heart. I'm saying we need to be intentionally good. And intentionally good means I need to do the things that others are not willing to do so I can have the life that others are never going to have. So I wanted to share that with your readers or your listeners.
Yeah, and I just want to add the third one is valuing people. I mean, it doesn't, I can say for myself, it didn't come easy because I had a vision and a goal, and my first reaction was I'm going to do anything to plow through that and get there. And that was the wrong thing. I actually, at the beginning, I lost my team due to that. And I could say now, actually, some of those teammates even came back, and we have one of the greatest teams right now, and we couldn't, we're enjoying it tremendously, but valuing people really is the key to it.
And I think you guys do that organically. And we have a question. I'm going to get to that. I have a question though. I think, Chad, you bring up a good point. I think I'm paraphrasing, being intentional with your growth, right? What, just so as someone has a reference point, how do I know I'm being intentional with my growth as opposed to not? Like, you'd be asking this if you're being intentional with your growth, or you'd be asking that if you weren't, or examples of behavior.
Yeah, so Charles, I'll share it in this way. If someone asks you if you have a child, you either say yes or no, right? You know very clearly if you have a child or not. So if you're being intentional with your growth, you'll know because you have a very clear, methodical way of developing yourself. If you don't have a methodical way of developing yourself, one of the things I do is every month, I at minimum read one book per month. So every month I decide what the book is. I have 15 more pages. I'm reading the book called The Trillion Dollar Coach. This is the coach that coached Google, Apple, all the CEOs of these major companies, and every month I read a book. But if you're not sure if you have a growth plan, I can tell you don't have a growth plan. Mm-hmm. The same way if you're not sure if you have a child. If you're not sure you have a child, then you probably don't have a child, right? So I would say this is that when you know that you have a growth plan, it's because you have specific things that you know you need to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis to make you better the next day, the next month, the next year. And for me, I'll share with mine is one is every night every night. It doesn't matter. Even last night, I got home at 1 o'clock in the morning. We went out for some food with some friends, and got home at 1 o'clock. I spent 20 minutes preparing for my next day, and I wrote down what was my lesson learned, what was I most grateful for. That's a growth plan. Every month, I read at least one book per month. Every month, I prepare for the upcoming month of what needs to be done to make it an effective month, personally, professionally. So that's being intentional with your growth. I know many people that say, I want to be good, I want to grow, I want to develop. And they say the words, but their lifestyle never lines up with what they're saying. All I'm saying is live a congruent life. Live a life that matters. Live a life that what you say and what you do are one. And, for us, it just means having your yes be yes and your no be no. So I would just say that if you're not sure, if you're living that type of life, if you're not sure that you have an intentional growth plan, then I would draw it out. What does that look like to become more of a leader and to grow to impact more people positively? I hope that was
Yeah, that's
good.
excellent. That's and I'm thinking how detailed is Chad journaling? And Miracle Morning, I think I read, and I didn't follow anything. I'm thinking nonstop about it, but I do think it's funny because successful people, and I have friends and even family members, my wife, they're very intentional about being grateful and acknowledging those things. And I think there is a power. I forget, I don't know, a sports figure just mentioned this too. I'm like, there is power behind it. So someone asked a question, and I'll read it to you exactly where it was written, which was, how do you build resilience in your team?
So that's one of the things that is a struggle for a lot of organizations. And the first thing is to allow them to fail, and then allow them to fail forward. And I'm going to give an example with our coaching company.
Could I just interrupt 1 second, because I have a question about that. What do you understand that question to mean? How do you build resilience in your team? What do you understand that? Because you guys connected with it right away, and I'm not.
Yeah. So what I think I heard is that, how do you build the people on your team to be stronger, to get through the tough times, right? That's what I heard.
Okay.
And to that, yeah. And if that's not it, well, I apologize.
No, that makes sense. that absolutely makes sense. And it's a great question.
I appreciate also the clarity, Charles. But I think the key is this: we have to allow our team members to fail, because that's how they learn. If they fail and we're there and we say, okay, what did we learn from this? Let's apply it and develop it so that we could change the next time. That's a good thing. A lot of the times as business owners, we don't want them to fail. We have to build a buffer in our business model. And a lot of the times it needs to be a buffer in our cash flow, because a lot of the times we can't allow it to fail because people can't get to the next month. I'm just being real.
Right.
So the truth is that we need to build in our business model buffer so that people can fail on our team. We can help them, pick them up, dust them off, say, what did we learn? How can we apply it differently next time? And let them continue to grow. That builds resiliency. I always bring it back to a child. I don't know any child that has learned to run without learning how to fall. Children learn how to run by learning how to fall. We build resiliency by learning how to fail first, and then learn from that and grow and develop. And it builds muscle memory for us to grow and develop and learn. So that's what I would say is fail forward. And John Maxwell wrote an amazing book on that.
Really?
Fail forward.
So, and by the way, that was the right question, which I think is a great question. I also think too that I also think there needs to be that environment where it's a supportive, like it's a team issue. One thing that when we have our attraction meetings, we go through headlines from the week, right? And so positive and negative. So like we love the positive praising and stuff, but if there's something negative, we go through that too. And I think, I think that could help build resiliency. I mean, I think it's important, but yeah, I think that's a next level question. I think that was a great question. I think it's a great answer too.
And that was
And you know, we'll be doing more, and Chad and Danielle, we're gonna have a couple of organizations really out there in the next year in terms of assisting franchisors. I know Chad and Danielle are going to be a part of it, but if you'd like to reach out to Danielle and Chad, it's the Lions Pride Leadership. Certainly, if you let our team know, you know, we'll connect you or reach out to them directly. And just so you know, I mean, they're very real. Chad and Danielle do real things. I know they're working with some really good franchisor brands. And I'm going to be honest, guys. Well, I've, on a personal level, the webinars we've done, this one's like so connected with me that I think, you know, I'd be shocked if I didn't call you up in about 5 days saying, hey guys, you know, it's just really interesting. So I really appreciate the time. Anything else you guys want to discuss?
No, I'd like to say thank you for having us on here, Charles. This is something that Danielle and I are wildly passionate about. And I hope that the stuff we share just will impact, even if it's just one franchise owner, it would be amazing. Hopefully it's more than that, but you know, just thank you. We appreciate you. We love your team. You guys are doing awesome stuff. We love what you do. We continue to follow what you do, and that's it.
He took
Guys,
my part. That's
that was her
one.
part.
You know, they said
yeah, no, I appreciate it. I mean, no one knows. If you are listening, we try to have the whole webinar without Chad and just with Danielle, but it didn't work out. But guys, I really this is really amazing stuff. And I thank you so much. And then we're going to talk soon, and everyone's been on the webinar. You know, thank you. And for that question about resilience, thank you for the kind words too. I appreciate the comments and stuff. So guys, thank you so much. And then we'll catch up soon. Okay.
All righty. Our pleasure.
Thanks guys.
Bye-bye.